What's going on, guys? It's Kofi Boa, KY, not Kai the Creative. So with everything kind of going on in terms of social media content, everything's starting to turn more vertical. People are watching a lot more things on their phone. They're going to TikTok, they're going to Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, things like that. A lot of things have switched over to vertical content. And as content creators and filmmakers, videographers alike, we are looking for solutions to make it a little bit easier to capture some vertical content. Now, you could always use something like a tripod with an L bracket, or even the same bracket on a gimbal, but I always kind of found it hard to find a handheld solution when I'm filmmaking and get vertical content at the same time, which is why I built this. So this is the FX3 Vertical Rig. So Small Rig actually sent me a bunch of parts to build this rig today, and I'm here to show it to you guys, how to build a rig that's great for handheld content. All right, so let's get started on the FX3 Vertical Rig, starting off with the cage. So we're actually gonna take this camera and we're gonna put it over to the side just a little bit because we're actually going to prep the cage first. So making sure the cage is prepped with its top handle is a really good way to make sure that this gets in there and fits at the end of the day. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take our Small Rig top handle here, and this is going to go right on the top of this rig. Now, the reason why you want to do that is you want to give enough clearance on this pin right at the top here to make sure that when we do put our camera inside of it, that it fits nice and snug. We don't have to worry about having to take everything out at the end of this if we had done this step last. What I like about these Small Rig cages is that they do have little tools in here that you could actually screw in your cage. I know it last time when I had other Small Rig cages, I had to actually go and look for like a key or a quarter or something like that, but this comes in handy. All right, so there we are. That's kind of the beginnings of this rig. As you can see, if I want to turn this upside down and start shooting vertically with my top handle, I can do that. Now, once all the attachments are kind of put on there, you'll understand as to why this rig is set up like this. Now, for the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take this rod clamp adapter. So what we're gonna do is this rod clamp is actually gonna go onto the bottom of the cage. So right about here, we're just gonna line up these screws right about here. And I'm actually gonna use the Allen key that came with one of the side handles. So if you're ever buying any sort of Small Rig cage or anything like that, it's cool that they do have these tools that make your life a little bit easier when you are rigging out your stuff. All right, so now that this rod clamp adapter is attached, we can actually get our 50mm rod. So these are two Small Rig 50mm rods. These are about a foot in length, and they're gonna go right at the bottom here. All right, so these rods aren't just good for mounting options onto them as well, but if you want to set your camera down in this vertical rig, it's going to be a little bit tougher to do that. So what's happening is this camera rig is setting down on these rods. Next thing we're going to use is the Small Rig VMount battery plate with another rod adapter clamp on there as well. So this is where I'm going to put my VMount battery that's going to power a lot of the stuff that I have. Now, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have enough room on your camera. You want to flip this little screen up here to make sure that you can still use your mounting options, the touch focus and stuff like that. And then you don't want your V-mount plate to go past that. That way, if you want to kind of hide it to protect your screen or anything like that, it gives you that option. It gives you a little bit more protection. It gives you the flexibility that you can still use a lot of the options that are on the screen. This is going to be the V-mount battery plate. It's all locked in here. And I'm just gonna go ahead and use a normal, newer V-mount battery that's gonna go on here. You can use any V-mount battery, that's fine, but I'm gonna use this newer one for the sake of this video. So we're gonna get into the side handle. So this one's by U-Rig and this one's by Small Rig. And what's cool is that the actual pins on the side here, the actual openings, allow you to put a side handle at the top here. Normally it's used for a NATO rail situation, but this is really cool, especially if I wanna just kind of have a vertical rig. So I think they actually had this in mind. So this is great if I want to use two handles while I'm shooting, kind of keep it close to the chest, or I have the option to use the top handle if I need to. So this is kind of how this rig is looking so far. All right, so what I'm gonna use is going to be this Rode NTG video mic that's gonna go right at the top here. I'm putting it on the left side handle because I wanna give enough space for my monitor, which you're gonna see how I mount that later on. But this is going to go right into here. Make sure this is nice and tight because a lot of these Rode mics and stuff like that, when they are on the cold shoe, they do have a tendency to fall off. And the audio input is actually gonna be placed. Just gonna make sure that that is all good and able for me to put this down on it. This is going to be the main event, and that's how I'm going to set up the monitor for vertical shooting. What I do have here is a Small Rig monitor mount down here, and what's cool about cold shoes is that they're completely square, so they're equal on either side. So I could actually just take this to the side here, throw this into my top handle, tighten that up on this side here. Now that's nice and tight. And then what I could do is I could take my Atomos Shinobi monitor, and I could actually just kind of mount it onto the side of this clamp over here. Now what happens is that emulates kind of a bigger iPhone looking screen. So if I am shooting vertical, and you can see right about here, this is a vertical setup right here, and then my monitor is down on the side instead of it being horizontal. Then all I have to do is get my dummy battery onto here. That's just gonna go on the back of the monitor like you normally would. And our HDMI cable, this is just one of the coiled ones. We are gonna be using our old faithful lens. This is the Sony 35mm G Master that's gonna go right about here. That's gonna go on the front of this guy with our matte box. And last but not least is going to be our small rig, kind of miniature matte box. So this guy actually has an adapter that's made specifically for the 67mm filter thread. It's gonna go right at the front here. And then we're just going to clamp on our matte box onto here. And this is the final product. So this is the Sony FX3 Vertical Rig. So it has all the components that's ready for vertical shooting, especially if you're a handheld shooter. You have the side mounts onto here in case you want to keep things close to your chest and nice and smooth. And then if you also want to do some run and gun filmmaking, you do have your top handle on there as well, with your monitor kind of set up vertically, so you get to know the proper composition orientation for this rig build. So these are all the parts that I have been using, and everything's going to be in the description down below. So if you guys are interested in building your own vertical rig, this is going to be the setup that you're going to be using. This is the Sony FX3 Vertical Rig. So these are all the parts and components that I use when I'm going to capture handheld vertical content. Anything from Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, TikToks, things like that. These are all the parts I'm going to use with my FX3. Now, don't feel discouraged. You can use a lot of these parts on any mirrorless camera. You just have to change out the cage. That being said, I'm going to check out of this video right now. So if you do have any comments, questions, concerns, leave them down below. Make sure you like and subscribe and all the things that YouTubers harass you to do. And leave a comment on what your vertical rig for your camera is. This has been KY, not Kai the Creative, and I'll see you guys in the next one.